Today, we are diving into one of the most talked about and, yeah, one of the most controversial books out there, The 48 Laws of Power. But we're not just going to list off a bunch of rules. We're going to get into the philosophy behind it, what it says about us, about how we interact, and how influence really works.
So let's start with a really basic question that gets right to the heart of it. Is power something you can actually own? Like cash in your pocket or a fancy job title. Well, the philosophy we're breaking down today argues pretty strongly that the answer is no, not at all.
Instead, power is treated as this fluid, constantly moving force. It's not something you can just grab and hold on to. It's a social thing, a psychological energy that pops up in the space between people. Think of it as a mix of how people see you, your status, and your ability to sway them. It's basically a game played out in our relationships.
And to really get a grip on this game, the philosophy uses all of human history as this giant laboratory. It's a place where we can watch our deepest ambitions and fears play out under all kinds of pressure.
So, what's the first lesson from this human laboratory? It's that power, more often than not, starts on the surface. It's all about appearances, about mastering the image you put out there, and controlling the story that people tell themselves about you.
And that brings us to a really key distinction. On one side, you've got your essence. That's who you really are, your actual skills, your true intentions. But on the other side, you've got your appearance, the polished, strategic version of yourself that you show to the world. And the argument here is that in the game of power, your appearance is often way more important than your essence.
These points right here are built on that exact idea. For example, you never, ever want to outshine your boss because that just triggers their insecurity. You have to carefully manage what people get to see because what they perceive becomes your reality. And maybe most importantly, you have to position yourself so that people need you. When they depend on you, that's when you have real, solid leverage.
Okay, let's go a layer deeper. Once you've got a handle on that outer game of appearance, you have to master the inner game. And that means reading people, looking right past what they say and do to figure out what's really driving them.
This quote, this is basically the psychological key to the whole philosophy. The entire system is built on this idea that, deep down, we're all driven by these powerful, often hidden emotions. Things like vanity, fear, jealousy. If you can start to see these forces at work in other people, you can start to predict what they're going to do next.
This means influence isn't about just telling people what to do. No, it's this subtle, psychological dance. It's about watching someone closely enough to understand their insecurities, figuring out what they secretly need or want, and identifying those little emotional triggers that really guide their behavior.
So, you've managed your appearance, and you're learning how to read people. What's next? Well, now we get to the actual tools of the trade, the strategic arsenal you can use to build your influence.
The book lays out a bunch of these really powerful and honestly kind of counterintuitive tools. We're going to zero in on 4 of the big ones: silence, absence, emotion, and timing. When you use these the right way, they're not just actions, they become strategic weapons.
First up, silence. Look, we live in a world where everyone is just talking, so saying less can be an incredible source of strength. Silence makes you seem more powerful, more thoughtful. It actually forces other people to start talking to fill that void, and when they do, they often reveal their own plans and their own anxieties. You're basically giving them the space to intimidate themselves.
Next is the art of absence. I want you to think about this like basic supply and demand, but for relationships. If you're always around, always available, you become common. Your value drops. But by strategically pulling back, you create a sense of scarcity. It makes people want you more. Suddenly, your presence isn't a given, it's an event.
Now, emotion is a total double-edged sword. The first and absolutely most critical step is mastering your own emotions. You can't be ruled by knee-jerk anger or excitement. Only when you've got that self-control can you start to clearly see how the emotions of others, their fears, their ego, their passions, can be guided.
And finally, timing. The philosopher uses this brilliant metaphor. Act like you're watching the tide. A master strategist doesn't just force things to happen. They feel the natural rhythm of events, and they wait patiently for that perfect moment to make a move. If you strike too early, your victory will be fragile, but if you wait too long, the opportunity's gone for good.
Now, I know what you might be thinking. This all sounds very tactical, maybe even a little predatory, but this is where the philosophy takes a really profound turn. It's not just about how to gain power, it's about having the wisdom to know its limits.
This here highlights the huge difference between just brute force and what you could call intelligent influence. Aggressive power plays, they create enemies, they create backlash, and they lead to isolation. But real sustainable influence is much more flexible. It builds loyalty because people need you, and it creates a network that actually lasts.
And this right here, this is the ultimate lesson. A lot of people think this book is about getting as much power as possible, but it's not. The final and maybe the most important law of all is that the greatest power is knowing where to stop. Pushing past that limit is the surest way to lose everything.
So when you zoom out and look at the whole picture, the argument is that this book was never meant to be a manual for becoming a monster. It's more like a spotlight shining on the hidden mechanics of how we all interact. It's a tool for understanding the world around you, a defensive guide to protect yourself from manipulation, and a deep study of human patterns that have repeated over and over again.
Which leaves us with the big, central question to think about. Now that you understand the mechanics, is this knowledge a shield or is it a sword? Is the whole point to protect yourself in a pretty competitive world, or is it to control the people in it? The answer, I guess, really depends on how a person chooses to use it.